That's the way. Now I use rubber bands to affix my phone.
Oh, how funny. Yeah, there are brackets.
Yes.
Invest in one of those little fancy brackets, right?
Yeah, hey, that'd be like $7. What are you, crazy?
Especially when you figured out the rubber band concept.
That's
Got
right.
it, like,
You know, always make do.
always make do, right? Good morning, Steve. How are you today?
I couldn't be any better. There'd have to be two of me if there was.
I think I've had a very similar morning with setup. It's so funny that you're struggling with yours too.
Oh yeah, always. Anytime you got, there should be. I'm sure there's a phone setup thing that just says, "Hey, I'll just put that right there on a tripod or something." But I got one that works great for my iPad. But that's the way. Now I use rubber bands to affix my phone.
Oh, how funny. Yeah, there are brackets.
Yes.
Invest in one of those little fancy brackets, right?
Yeah, hey, that'd be like $7. What are you, crazy?
Especially when you figured out the rubber band concept.
That's right.
Like,
You know, always make do.
always make do, right? How are you this morning? Or this afternoon?
I really am good.
Morning for me. I'm still waking up.
No, it's still morning, 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock here on the East Coast. You know, I'm down in Tampa, so it's 11 o'clock. 9 o'clock for you in Arizona.
Yes.
You know, and you're looking mighty pretty this morning, young lady.
Thank you very much. How sweet of you. I feel like I'm still waking up. I've been up for hours.
Oh, really?
I've been up for hours, but I'm still waking up. I don't know what that is.
You know, I just did a little video on that, talking about how we, you know, decide what we're going to do. But sometimes you're groggy. Sometimes it sits right here, and you go, wonder why. Maybe you slept way too much. How much sleep did you get, young lady?
I got a lot of sleep, but I've been doing a lot of deeper meditation and asking for more guidance. And I think a lot of the guidance is coming in while I'm sleeping. So I feel like I'm still processing while the guidance is coming in. So it's like, do you know what I'm saying? Where it's like you're getting the information and the support, but I need to ask for rest. Please give me the downloads while you also help me rest, you know?
That's right. That's right. You got to get that REM sleep. You know, my wife tells me all the time, she says, you know, you need to go for a sleep study. And other people tell me I need to go for that too, because, you know, I sleep on the average, I sleep 90 minutes and then I get up and then I do something and I sleep 90 minutes. And if I've had a long sleep, it's 2.5 hours. So, you know, so a lot of times I'll go through the night with only, well, usually I get 5 to 5.5 hours of sleep, interrupted twice, you know, but it seems to be all I need.
I'm going to put a link at the bottom for everyone who may struggle with this, because I usually listen to brainwave music while I'm sleeping. It helps you get into a deeper REM, and it's really soft, and there are 8-hour like music that's playing, and it really does help a lot with waking up more aware and more intentional in the morning. I didn't do it last night, and I think a little element of that. So I'm kind of stressing myself this morning, going, darn, I wish I'd done that.
Not taking your own advice. There you go.
I know,
right.
yeah. It's kind of funny how that happens sometimes.
It is. That's right.
Yeah. So
now we're talking about grace today, right? Grace?
Yeah, you know, it's funny, you know, like we think of grace a lot of the time, so like movement, you know, she's so graceful, or he's so graceful, or, you know, I think of, you know, more like, you know, like when you think of like prayer, you know, like Lord's grace, you know, there's a lot of different ways to use that word, right? And I was thinking about, you know, more about how pulling up more grace in your everyday life creates more compassion and empathy for yourself and people around you. So I'm talking about the term of grace here, where I'm thinking being more open and, you know, giving people the benefit of the doubt, giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes you misunderstand something and you're not giving yourself the space to open up your perspective and see something from a different viewpoint. Or, you know, you're just really hard on yourself, agenda focused. I think of 2019 and 2020 coming up, you know, all these people have these big goals and big aspirations for themselves. But my question is, are you putting expectations and goals that are almost so high and so difficult that we almost punish ourselves and almost create a little self-sabotage. So I was thinking about this with January being usually, people thinking about workout goals or, trying to attain or achieve. And I almost think that creating grace around those elements in your life are an opportunity to kind of shift and be more gracious towards your goal setting and doing something a little bit on a different perspective than average years. What were you thinking?
Well, I'm trying to go along with and formula. I mean, I have so many things. If you were in my head, you'd be going duck. There's so much going on in there. And,
duck. I love it.
You got the New Year's intuition, the New Year's resolutions. And when I sit with my clients and tell them, you have to set your goals, you have to write this stuff down, and they go, but what if I write it down and then I don't do it? Or what if my goals change? And I go, I don't think you understand how this works. A goal is something you wrote down and you can erase it or you can replace it. It's something that doesn't have to be set in stone. You want to be able to achieve it, and having it in front of you is always more achievable. But right, like you said, if I set myself up, and a lot of times that's why they need a coach too, because we'll say, hey, these are, a guy who wants to sell $1 million and last year sold 100,000. You might want to say, hey, you might want to relook at that goal, and
right.
But it's the forgiveness of making mistakes. One of the greatest challenges I think most people face is forgiving themselves for having made a mistake, isn't it? Like, so a lot of people are like, why did I marry that guy? Or why did I marry that guy 3 times? That's a whole different thing. But it is. You have to forgive yourself. Like some people say, I hate myself for putting up with that abuse in that relationship for all this time. And you go, that's where you have to forgive yourself. We all grow at different levels. We all learn different things. But the grace that you're talking about is exactly right. The forgiveness that comes with your own understanding. And I always tell the story, Tamra, and I was like 29 or 30 years old, and I had a friend sitting across the table from me. And I used to be a real hothead. I mean, I still am if you get me into those circumstances, right? But it was, I lost my temper a lot in those days. And so I was sitting across the table, just a dining room table from someone, a good friend. And and we just looked out, and I said, look at that cardinal. And he said, I don't see a cardinal. I went, it's right there, bright red, hello. And he does this, he looks and he goes, I don't see it. I went, oh my God, what is wrong? And I get up and I walk over to where he's at and I squat right down next to him and I said, it's right. And you know what? From where he sat, there was just enough of a tip of a tree that he didn't see it. And suddenly it occurred to me that we can be in the same exact place at the same exact time and not have the same experience. And I had to start living a grace life that I could understand what other people were doing.
Yes. Getting down to somebody else's level and seeing their perspective is essential. I agree with you. Sometimes we miss those opportunities. And, I like someone just posted in, Devin actually put up that he exchanges resolution with evolution. I love that idea because you are always evolving, and New Year's resolutions can almost have that underlining tone of failure. If I don't achieve, or, it's almost kind of silly how we do a little bit of a self-sabotage there. So I love that. That's a great way of trying to shift that. So it's kind of a fun tip. I love that. Thank you for that. So
yeah, I agree
with you. Getting to somebody else's level and being able to see from their perspective creates more connection, deeper understanding of, like a lot of the times we are defensive because we want somebody to understand our perspective before we get invested in understanding somebody else's perspective, which I think is really the nooks of most of our battles in our life, is because we're so busy trying to share or force or control that we miss the opportunity. I told you I didn't sleep very well last night. Exactly. We miss the opportunity to connect on a different level. And it's that pause, that opportunity is the real chance to bridge the gap of confusion. And really to expand your emotional range, because the more you actually step into somebody else's perspective, the more emotional empathy we create. We have to have our own personal pain, our own personal experiences, but a lot of the times we don't go beyond that. We don't try to see it from the other side. And we shorten our potential. We shorten our range of growth, and that grace, that ability to bridge the gap between that confusion and being able to understand somebody else from a different perspective is shortened when we create the potential of connection. So we shift it. Just have to change your perspective.
Yeah. That's right. And Devin jumps in again, and he's talking about the change is difficult. He said, no, it's the resistance to that change. And boy, you know, you've got it on spot on, Devin. That's a really good point, is that so many times when we want other people to see our point of view, so we entrench ourselves, and then we try and tell other people. And the exact opposite. I mean, I look at the political system we've got today right now, with everybody hating and not wanting to change their position, and, you know, just so much anger. And it's like, well, really, you know, if you learn to give grace, you know, I mean, if I was Hillary Clinton, I would be really upset that I lost. But you know what? If she were to give back that grace and really start to evolve and change, you know, become that evolution rather than the resolution, she could really impact a whole lot more people than doing what we're doing to Trump, you know. And so imagine if all of us got behind Trump, and if you don't like Trump, then we change him in 2 or 3 more years or whatever that is. But it's back to evolving.
Yeah, well, even like, okay, let's look at the resistance of that, because I think a lot of the times we miss the whole point. We're not going to like every president, unfortunately. And, you know, he's in office, he's providing services, he's doing something to create change. Now, natural change and forced change are 2 different elements. You've got change that creates more resistance, and natural change is the evolutional process. The, you know, like I think of, you know, a fish that used to, you know, have legs. You know, it's an evolutional process. You know, there's, you know, that's a terrible example, but anyway, like that was a really
the salamander that used to be a fish. How about that salamander that used to be a fish?
Fish with legs. But you know, there's this flow and evolution to life, and if we're resistant to it, we create more heat within us. And so I'm really like, you know, even not everyone likes this president, but what is he doing that is working, and can we rally behind what is serving the community versus putting so much attention on what's not working, creating more anger? That's that singular focus towards what's not working versus what is working. And there will always be darkness. There will always be things that don't work. But what does work? What is the positive evolution of this president? You know, just kind of shift your perspective.
Well, and you know, to go along with that, I was doing, like I said, I was doing a video that I'll be putting out later, earlier today, and it was people are afraid to put their kids out in the yard. You're like, why are you afraid to put your kids out in the yard? Well, because somebody will steal them. And the truth is, nobody's going to steal your kid. You don't know anybody whose kid was stolen. You probably don't know anybody who knows anybody whose kid is stolen. But the media has changed that, how we cover things, how we dwell on things. You'll hear 500 times how this one kid in, you know, way someplace far away was stolen, and oh my God, and it puts the fear into us. And so what you have to do is start, when we talk about grace, you have to start understanding that their job as a news media is to keep us watching. And the way they keep us watching is to sensationalize and to dramatize the whole thing, make it dramatic. And so understand that, you know, if you were asking me to tell you a story, I might tell you a story of how, hey, I got out a cup of coffee and I'm having a nice little cup of coffee. But if I wanted to dramatize it, I go, I got out this really hot cup of coffee. Oh my God, steam was rolling. The huge difference in how we tell a story that makes something interesting. And so when you're listening to the news, when we talk about grace, you have to understand within yourself that their job is to keep you watching, tuned in 24/7.
Well,
so in your life, do the same thing, right?
Yeah, I was also going to mention, you know, a lot of the times we don't realize why we feed into that. Sensationalism is kind of an actual, you know, real thing. It is a protective layer within us that is actually a natural part of, like, if you look back at the cavemen, you know, sensationalism was actually used as a protective layer. So when we feed into that belief, when we see the darkness, we see that focus on the negative energy, we feed it and we build momentum to it. But there is no threat. There's really, I mean, we pretty much live a very safe life. We pretty much can, for most of us, we're privileged enough to where we can get food easy enough and shelter and clothing on our backs, the 3 basic needs. For some, yes, that's a reality that we should be supporting and helping them bridge that. You know, if they're having struggles, we should support those people. Unfortunately, yeah, you're right. News works on ratings. It works on feeding numbers. And yeah, they've noticed sensationalism does feed into our barbaric behavior, our instinctual need of negativity. What's that?
Oh, it's really funny. I mean, you talk about that. We talk about news, but you know what? The weatherman does it. The weatherman, I mean, we think weather is just weather. You say, oh my God, a horrible storm is coming, and then nothing happens. Oh my God, it's good. It feels like 90, I mean, it's 97 out, but it feels like 105, and you're going to die if you go outside. I mean, the weather people dramatize it. So if the weather people can dramatize it, you know everybody else's job is to do that. And that's also when you hear people tell stories.
But even to not feed into that negativity, what I'm trying to say, because you're right, we all live it. We all, I mean, we all tell stories and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired and da-da-da. We are melodramatic beings. It's part of our nature. But to understand that element of ourselves creates grace in itself. To understand that, you know, that part of you is part of the wiring, the genetic wiring of how we exist. And so what I like to shift from is recognizing that it's an extreme case of connection. It's not a valued sense of connection. And we can recognize, okay, yeah, that, you know, when somebody's really angry, you know, you talk to people that are in a state of real anger about, you know, he told me this or she did that, and they get really invested. That is that ego's desire. That's that mind's protective layer of the ego, like I was saying earlier, the desire to control, the desire to know, to be. That pushes that resistance. That's, again, that forced change. It's not a natural change. And when we sit in that, we create more of that stimulation. And so living in grace is going back into recognizing it exists, but is it really serving you? Is it something like talking negative and posting negative about the present, creating the stimulation of this negative energy? Instead, what if we talked about the things that are working? What would that be like? Because the desire is for success. The desire is for connection. So why do we focus so hard on the negative aspect of connection versus what I'm saying? If we shift our perspective to saying, you know, yeah, I may not agree with the approach he's taking on this or that, but maybe the whole point is to draw attention, and maybe we're looking at it from a dark perspective and what would be another opportunity. Instead of saying what's not working, well, what are some ideas that could work? You know, how do you create resolution? How do you figure out the opportunity of connection and building that bridge to clarity instead of staying in the confusion? Well,
and along with that, then, when we talk about grace as used in our daily lives, think about your work. I think a lot of the people who tune in here will be working at corporations, and rumors start and gossip spreads. And you have to offer the grace to the person who's being gossiped about. And you have to start asking the real question is what I'm hearing the truth? Sometimes you have to go to the source and say, hey, this is what I've heard. Most people don't. Most people hear something and then they go ahead and spread it on to somebody else. Did you hear what so-and-so did or said? And the grace that we have to offer is, imagine if that was you. Yeah. What would you want to happen in your life? And the question always comes back to, if it was you, and they go, well, it never would be me. Well, that's not the point. The point is, what if it was? Because as we know, rumors happen for almost no reason. And when they start, it's hard to put them down. I think it was Zig Ziglar who at one point in time said, when somebody brings a rumor to you, the best thing you can say is that going to make my day, lift me up, or improve my day? And if it's not, tell them, hey, thanks a lot. You know, hey, have you heard about Steve? And they go, is this something that's going to lift me up, make me feel better, or encouragement about Steve? And they go, well, no. You go, then I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Right? And so you get to choose every day how you're going to handle the people who come to you with some of the negative. And so give grace not only to the person who is maybe going to be rumored about, but give grace to the person who wants to spread the rumor. Maybe they just need to be told, we shouldn't be spreading bad stuff. And you're not saying it, shut up, I don't want to hear it. You're saying, you know what, if it's not going to impact me in a positive way, I probably don't want to hear it. And some people will dislike you because you're going to be a positive guy. But some people will start to respect you for, hey, you know, Steve doesn't listen to that stuff, right? Tamra doesn't listen to that stuff, so I'm not even going to tell her. Good, thank you very much. What a blessing, right?
Well, how about
the grace that we...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay, well, grace is the thing that that keeps us grounded. I think when Tamra said we were going to be talking a little bit about grace today, it's the foundation. Like she said, we've got all these other things, but Amazing Grace is always what came to my head. The song, and what it talks about is that's the foundation of how our lives are lived. We put a certain foundation in. I talk all the time about how people shoplift now, and nobody says or does anything about it, and we lose millions and billions of dollars every year in shoplifting. And it's because we've lost a foundation, a part of our lives, which is all about sense and sensibility. So the grace that comes with, would you want somebody stealing from you, right? And people go, oh, that's not the point. You go, no, it is the point, right? So if you allowed people just to wander through your house and pick up whatever they wanted, so those are the things we have to look at. Where does the grace happen in our lives that lifts up the people around us? Isn't that what we want?
I think that's a great point, but I also like to spin that a little bit. What if you're the person who's getting gossiped? How do you navigate that? How do you live a graceful life when knowing people are thinking terribly about you? I think of this as predominantly in a case of divorce, where children are hearing negative things about the other spouse. It is a very intense experience. Not only are you defensive, but then your children have to cope with your defense and the father's or the mother's perspective. So I think it's really important for us at that point to really create grace by saying things like, I understand that may be their perspective. I don't share in that feeling. Or if they're gossiping about you, you can literally say, I understand that there's a lot of hurt. And, when we're hurting, we use hurtful words. Creating compassion and grace around those spaces creates a new skill for children and within your own dialogue, your internal self-hate. I hate to use the word hate, but basically when you're in a relationship of deep resistance, you're saying things to yourself like, I wish I hadn't, or I shouldn't have done that, or you start shaming. And so a way to navigate that can be simply by literally saying to yourself, it's okay that they have a negative perspective of me right now. It's not my truth. It's not who I am. And I don't need to identify with it to stay stuck in those patterns, but a chance to really, heal and love yourself through those experiences. Or, it's intense. I can't even imagine being a public figure in the way that's, politically driven, right? Because it's so much mudslinging. But, we're human and we're making mistakes. And the whole point to having a human experience is to be compassionate and loving and relatable by making mistakes. So if we make it wrong to make mistakes, we become like that belief that, connecting with someone would become wrong. It's a really unrealistic.
Tamra, I had, after my second divorce, horrible things were being said. And it was amazing to me because it was through the church. I'd been a real mover and shaker in this church at one point in time. And when I stepped away, because I finally said I'm going to file for a divorce, I told the pastor, but then no one talked to me. And I ran across somebody at one point in time. And my friend Tommy, who I thought knew me real well, and he came up to me afterwards. I said, hey, Tom, I saw him in the mall or something. And I went, hey, Tom, how's it going, buddy? And he was like, you know what? I'm not even going to talk to you. I went, what's going on? And he said a few things that he'd heard. And I just looked at him and I went, oh, wow. I said, Tom, I thought you knew my heart, because if you knew my heart, you'd know that couldn't possibly be true. But then I had to release that too. I couldn't hold it against Tom. I mean, I could say, you know better, you this, but I went, if you knew my heart, you would know better. And I thought you knew it. But hey, and I just looked at him and went, God bless, buddy. I'll see you again. And walked away. There's nothing you can do sometimes to change people's opinions. So all you can do is give them the grace and yourself the grace of going, I know it's not true. All these people believe it's true, obviously. Just walk away.
It's a very intense experience. And I think it's also very important to recognize that I look at those kind of encounters as like, why did that even happen? Like sometimes I'm like curious, what was the gift in having that encounter? And sometimes it's realizing that there are safe people to share, and then there are safe people not to share with, and learning that element of discernment comes from those places. And, a lot of the times, I truly believe a lot of the times people get invested in the drama because there's a desire within them to have some sense of value. And drama can have that built sense of, I got a secret, nobody knows, or let me tell you about this secret, that kind of a very unhealthy way of, building connection.
Well, Some people live on drama, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And so you have to recognize that if somebody's willing to step into those spaces and literally allow themselves to be a part of the drama or even engage in the drama, it's not being authentic to who they are. They're invested in a perceived reality versus their own true reality. Because the truth is, he was living a connection through you, through somebody else's belief system, not his own. So if he knew your heart, it's more, he didn't know his own. He didn't get a chance.
Yeah, that could be too.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he doesn't really get a chance to show up authentically. He felt guarded because he believed the beliefs of somebody else's experience versus his own with you. So I think it's really important to understand.
Yeah, I talk about, like you say, we've got intuition, and some people don't have an intuition. They just haven't honed it. And I always say, okay, here's one simple way to tell somebody that you want to hang with. And if they're the, oh, woe is me, right? Oh, woe is me. Poor Steve, I'm always on this. Or poor Steve. Somebody's always picking on Steve. I'm not doing well at work because somebody hates me at work. Somebody's got it out for me here at the church. Somebody's got it out for me here at the ball dime. You know, if they're saying that, they're not the ones who are authentic, because nobody always has a place where somebody hates them. You know, it's not that kind of life. And so if you put it in perspective, if your intuition isn't working where you can really get to know somebody, then just listen to their words and they'll tell you the truth about what you shouldn't be listening to. That to me is one of the greatest challenges, is how people don't listen well. It's like when you're asking for grace or when you're talking about grace, so many times it's our listening skills that are vital to our own success.
And if you're one of those people that's going through a woe is me phase, I want to gift you something. The truth is, you're just out of alignment. You're not being in your integrity. You're not being in your true sense of who you are. And so it's just an opportunity to reconnect, you know, really get a chance to really dial in. And I would step back from the outer world and really go in and get a chance to really recognize that, you know, something's out of balance, and it's an opportunity to start.
You know, and when we talk about it, you know, I like to keep it also personal. So if you're in your relationship now and you're struggling in any way, shape, or form with your relationship, then you have to go back to how much grace are you giving to your partner and how much are you expecting from your partner. And so you have to really start looking at your relationship as, are we being authentic with each other? Or can we be honest with each other? Or are we still afraid of what each is going to say? Right? I can't be honest with you about how I'm feeling about this. We can't talk about that because I'm afraid you'll get upset with me. And so you have to start looking at, am I the same way with them? If they're afraid to ask me or say something to me, then I haven't given enough grace to them for them to be authentic and true with me. Right?
Yeah, benefit of the doubt's a really tough one when it comes to trust, because I think a lot of people have been burned. You know, you say something and somebody's reaction is not what you expected, so then you make up that it's not safe to talk about those things. A lot of times somebody may not be present to having that conversation. You're not checking in to see if they're available to have those kind of conversations. Or maybe your approach, the words you're using. Sometimes we use the word you versus just saying when I experience. The word you, say like you did this or you did that. Projective talk really creates a lot of heat and anger in a conversation. So another way of navigating that is, when we were together, I experienced this happening and that happening. Instead of saying you're saying my perspective experience. And it allows somebody to meet you halfway. We don't really give grace in our conversations because we've never really been mindful in that space. We don't give intention to that. And we're so trying to get to the end of something before we've even started the journey. We're trying to, you know, end the fight or get it off our chest or share what we need to share, instead of saying,
you're not listening to me.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of saying, well, I really would like to talk to you about something that's on my mind. Would you like to talk now or maybe later today? Usually they want to talk about it now because they want to know, you know? But if you give permission or ask permission to talk, it does bring down the wall of defense, and it allows people to meet you, and that gives a gracious conversation for you know, that compassion and empathy to be in that space without having that spin right off the bat. Because I think a lot of the times, I know a lot of my guy clients will say, oh boy, here it comes, you know. You know, yeah, you may know that there's some serious work you're avoiding, because if you're saying that, that means you're avoiding your own opportunity for connection. Oh boy, here she goes. Well, if there's that conversation going on in your mind, then there's something you're running from too. And I think it's a really cool opportunity to sit there and say, well, I probably have some things I need to talk about too, and really take tally and have those opportunities of connection. What do you think? I think I may have lost our dear friend Steve. He's frozen on me. So anyway, get a chance to have spaces like that where we get a chance to really giving yourself a chance to have conversation like that. I did lose Steve. I don't know if you want to try to rejoin in. Let me see if I can send him a new invitation. Let me see. Add you. Sorry guys for the finger. Anyway, so I do think there you are. Welcome back.
Okay, I'm glad to be back.
All right. I don't know how we lost you. So anyway, yes, I do think it's a hard space for people in communication and in loving conversations, because I think we're so busy trying to get to, back to safe or back to a loving, trusted relationship. But the problem is we're not giving each other the benefit of the doubt to have these hard conversations, and it can be very difficult. So I think if you can afford to those spaces. What's that? That
really is part of it. Hard conversations, and you have to. When Tamra says grace, I come to this hard conversation grace, which is everything she says to me, I have to say that's her truth, and I have to accept that as her truth. It'd be easy to say that's not what I said, that's not what I meant, that's not what I felt. I don't know how you felt that way. I don't know why you're saying that. The truth is, whatever she's saying is her truth. And so I have to start allowing it. I just have to listen, and I have to accept that that's her truth. And so when she says this, when she says that, I'm like, wow, I had no idea I was making them feel that way. So there's things I need to work on. I need it.
Or may not even be that you need to work on them. She just needs to be witnessed in her lie that she's telling herself. Because a lot of the times, the experience is just that she's seeing it through her filter, her perceived reality. And that's what a filter is, perceived reality. It is not necessarily the truth. It's her truth. So sometimes when you pour in your truth with her truth, there's a new understanding that grows. And it's like planting seeds. You need to invest in looking at the garden of your relationship. Are you pruning the weeds out, getting rid of the lies and the deception to let the healthy flowering relationship grow to its potential? And a lot of the times we miss those opportunities because we're so fearful of being vulnerable or speaking out of our misperceived perception. A lot of people I speak to all the time, well, if I said that, then you think I'm a dork, or you think I'm being too sensitive, or you're thinking that. That's your story. That's your belief of who you are. It is not the other person. Now, reality is, maybe you married someone or you connected with someone who's mirroring back that truth about you, which is really intense. Because a lot of times we marry our work. We pull in people to help us be better. So if somebody really thinks that poorly of you, it's an opportunity, again, to shift their perspective by being vulnerable so they get to know your true heart. And that can be very difficult.
Yeah, and sometimes, I remember, I think I've shared this with Tamra before on a different show, but sometimes your partner's afraid of creating an argument. Oh, I don't want to bring that up because I'm sure that'll create an argument. Now, I'm sure all of us have felt that way in our relationship. Oh, I know I don't want to say that because that'll just create an argument or they'll stop talking to me. But I always go back to, at 70 years old, I do funny things. I mean, weird things, So like, I still make car noises and funny noises. So when I drive along and I take a corner sharp, I make that. And when my wife and I, yeah, and we'd been married for like 2 years, and something my wife said at one point in time, she heard me on, that's what it was. She heard me on one of these broadcasts talking about the noises I make. And she got with me afterwards and she said, I heard you say that you make these noises when you go around the corner. I went, well, yeah. She says, now, we've been married 2 years, so we were together a year and a half before that. She said, I hated to drive because I thought you were making fun of my driving by making squealing noises like I was going too fast around the corner. So she didn't want to bring it up to me because she didn't want to have an argument, right? And all this time, it was just a misunderstanding.
See, and I think arguments happen in that way because of the way we approach it. A lot of the times we approach it because she already had this belief that you were teasing her driving. So she was already in an angry state or a resistant state. She made up a belief that wasn't based on truth. It was just a belief. And so that right there was her missed opportunity. And I feel like there's so much of life right there, such a great example of how we miss these really cool opportunities to dial it in and try something different. And it really is that, you know, if she approached you and said, oh my gosh, it's so funny you make those noises, but it totally makes you think you're criticizing my driving. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Actually, it reminds me of when I was a kid playing with my cars, you know. It would totally change the experience. But she held on to that, and in her story, it validated. It's like adding bricks to the load, right? He teases me when I drive. He makes faces when, you know, when I'm talking. It ends the relationship. It really does, because you're not airing out dirty laundry. You're not letting go of things. You're holding on to them.
That's right. That's right.
So,
and that's why the communication is so vital, and giving grace. If she'd have given me that grace early on of saying, I don't understand why you're making that noise, right? So that's all she had to do, was the grace of saying, tell me why you're doing that. We had had a great conversation probably about it, right? Yeah. Like you said. And of course, my not knowing that she had a problem probably exacerbated the problem. And so those are the challenges we face every day in our lives, whether it's at work, whether it's at home. We have to be aware of what other people's misconceptions are. You know, what are they bringing to the table? We're all in the same place at the same time, but they come with a whole different load of bricks than you come with. And your bricks are made out of this, and their bricks are made out of that. And if you tried to put them together, they wouldn't make a good foundation. So you have to figure out how you can get your bricks to change just enough to make that foundation that's going to create a relationship that really works.
Absolutely. This reminds me of even you know, have you ever had an experience where you're in a room or you just come into a room and you recognize somebody's in a bad mood and you say, gosh, it seems like you're in a bad mood. Have you ever done that? And they get more. Yeah.
I'm not in a bad mood. What are you talking about?
What do you mean? I'm in a bad mood, you know? I love that one because, you know, early in my practice, I used to feel like it was my responsibility to help people by calling out the shadow behavior. And shadow behavior is like behavior that's happening that you're unaware that you're doing. It's just a shadow. And early in my practice, I thought I was being supportive and loving. Learned quickly that is not what happened. I was
That's
really
not how they think it is.
I got a lot of fire for that, you know. But what I found was so fascinating is when I shifted that and I allowed the bad mood to exist and asked questions more like, is there anything going on that I can help support you around? Or do you need a hug? Do you need, you know, or just even a gentle pat if it's a feeler. Got to be very careful, because if they're not a feeler, this will set them off. But if you touch them or something and they're more receptive to that, looking for opportunities to support someone in that space creates amazing grace. And when you're feeling angry and you're in a bad mood, saying, you know what, I could really use a hug. I'm kind of in a bad mood. My daughter's notorious for this. She's awesome. When I'm a little grumpy, she goes, does mom need a hug? I'm like, yes, I do. Are you turning down a hug from your daughter? No. You know? So it's really a cool opportunity to recognize that, you know, if you're feeling somebody's kind of off or they're in a bad mood or something's not right, you can add to it or you can take away from it. And really knowing your grace in that space is huge. Because how you show up and how you create space, it comes back to you. That is always brought back to you, that opportunity. So looking for valuable moments in that way can really shift your perspective for the new year. So that's my intention for today, is to help you guys really look at opportunities in your life to see where you can see something from a different perspective. And sure, yes, I know I'm a little long. You're looking at
that was good.
40 minutes.
and it's what you hear, right? Well, we as podcasters, we as professionals, we listen for the signs, which is that was my thing for the day. Then I go, oh, we must be close to the end. So when I glance at the clock, it's like, yep, we are at the end, and that's always cool that you hear people.
Really
Yeah. But you hear people say that, you know, that's one of the things I do when I do my podcast for people is I try and give them a heads up as we roll to the end. They got to understand that we're coming to the end so they can say whatever they need to at the end to get it in, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so that's really cool. So we hope.
Do you have a wrap up for today that you would like to include, what you would like to send our listeners?
I think the wrap up here is I hope you've found a method in what we talk about to help your partner or help someone that you know through one more piece of their day. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, or even help you create more compassion and grace for yourself. I think if you can't do it here for you, then you're probably going to mess it up out here. It's going to mirror back at you, and the potential and the possibility is to recognize that it's not out there that's giving you trouble. It's usually what you're talking about internally that's being mirrored and gifting you the opportunity to see that potential shift. So if you're having a bad day, maybe you want to sit down and say, I need a couple of breaths around this. Create a little compassion. Or a cup of coffee. There you go. Me a BT. Well, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate you, and I so love our time together. So thanks again for being here.
Pleasure, yeah.
We'll see you again next week.
Yes, you will. And I hope we see you guys again next week, too. Always 11 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Arizona time, whatever. That's Mountain time, I think. Weird.
Yep.
Mountain time. Who ever heard of such a thing? Anyway, we'll look forward to that. Put it on your calendars. Put it in there and just tune in. We'd love to hear some feedback from you. We certainly would love some questions on what you would like to talk about. Drop them either to Steve at stevezapato.com or Tamra at tamrablanketship.com.
You got it.
Right.
Excellent.
And we'll go
Thanks,
from there. God bless. I hope you guys have a wonderful week.
You too. Bye-bye.